Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Ways to Conduct Successful Informational Interviews. This webinar is sponsored by the Emory Alumni Association and Office of Alumni Career Services. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sarah Rawls, Director of Alumni Career Services, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Hallie Crawford, a certified career coach who is based in Atlanta. So we have the pleasure of working with Hallie as one of our partner career coaches. And if you are not already aware of this service, we have 5 coaches who are special partners with the Alumni Association and offer exclusive discounts to Emory alumni on virtual or in-person coaching services. So we will be sure to send more out about that later. Some of you may have seen Hallie at an in-person workshop at the Miller Ward Alumni House over the past year. She's come in frequently to talk about various career transition subjects. And today we decided to focus on informational interviews, since we know that that is something that is complex and we receive a lot of questions around. So glad to hear Hallie's advice today. And we had over 70 alums sign up, so we do know that this is of importance to you all. Just a reminder, we will record today's presentation, so if you need to leave at any time, I will be sending out a link to view the recording on the Emory University YouTube channel. We have a career webinars playlist there that hosts over 70 archived sessions on a variety of professional development subjects. We will also send out Hallie's presentation slides as well as information about those coaching services. We will leave time at the end for questions. Thank you to those who sent your questions in advance. But please, as Hallie's speaking, feel free to type in questions on the question area of the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will maximize our time at the end of the presentation to answer those. So without further ado, I'll tell you a bit more about our presenter. As I said, Hallie Crawford is a certified career coach based in Atlanta, and her company, HallieCrawford.com, and team of coaches have helped thousands of people nationwide uncover their dream career and make it a reality. Hallie is regularly featured as a career expert in the media, including Forbes.com, The Wall Street Journal, CNN, AJC, and Fox Business News. For more information about her services, you can visit HallieCrawford.com. I'll send that out in the chat area along with our Alumni Career Services website, because we have many exciting things coming up this year. And Hallie is going to talk to you at the end about an exciting partnership that we will be launching in January. So Hallie, thanks for being here. I'll now turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate your time being here today. And we are going to give you some great information and advice about how to conduct successful informational interviews. And then, Sarah, once we get to the Q&A part at the end, if you could just help me field those through the chat box, that would be wonderful. Right. So I am excited to be with you all today. Let's dive right in, because we've got a lot of material to cover. So here's the deal. I am a certified career coach, as Sarah said, and I've been coaching and training for over 17 years. I know some of you might be saying, how is that possible? Because she sounds like she's 12. I'm actually 44, and I have a 9-year-old son, live here in Atlanta. And I want you to know, kind of as part of this, or as an introduction to this topic, that I understand that it can be easier said than done, you know, just to go talk to people that you don't know, right? I understand this can seem intimidating because, and I can especially understand this because I'm actually more introverted than extroverted. So even after, you know, being in business for over 17 years and having our reputation in our industry be incredibly positive, I still have to push myself sometimes to network or to reach out to people for partnerships. So I totally get that this can seem intimidating. And for some of you, it may not be your favorite thing to consider and think about, okay? But today, I'm much less shy after having practiced this over time, putting myself out there, you know, talking with people when I need to, and finding ways to make it work for me. And I've learned to put myself out there and use my moments of being extroverted to my advantage. And you can too, okay? So using the process that we outline here, this will help you because you will have specific steps to follow, and it will give you guidelines about how to handle informational interviews better so that you are more comfortable, okay? And I just want you to know too, and then we'll dive into our agenda here next, that I understand and want you to know that it is possible to overcome any fears or negative thinking you may have about networking and reaching out to people and conducting these interviews. It's possible to do that, and that is part of what we're going to talk about today, actually. So here's our basic agenda, everybody. We are going to talk about what are informational interviews, how do we define them, okay? We will talk about the typical obstacles that people face when they're considering setting them up, or even during the course of working through the process. We will give you 5 ways to conduct these informational interviews successfully. And I want you all to walk away from today with specific action steps that you will take, at least 1 or 2. And we're going to say in the next couple of weeks, because we've got Thanksgiving holiday coming up next week. But in the next couple of weeks, I want you to have specific action items that you will commit to and take in order to get the ball rolling with these for you, okay? And then as Sarah said, we are going to have some time for Q&A at the end. And also, I'll take a moment to tell you about our Identify Your Ideal Career program that's coming up in January. It's fantastic. Emory alum just love this program. So we'll talk to you about that as well. Okay, so let's start with how do we define what an informational interview is. Many of you may already know what this is and how to define it, and some of you may have even conducted some beforehand. The basic gist here is it's a one-on-one conversation with someone in an industry or in a role that you would like to pursue, okay? And here's the deal, everybody. When I say one-on-one, it can be either in person, it can be over the phone, or it can be via Skype. And I want you to keep in mind that it can be with someone who either works in a field or an industry that you're interested in, or even at a company or an organization that you're interested in as well. Or you can target people who are in a role that you're considering either getting into, or you know you want to get into that role and you need help with like job search advice, okay? So these are the kinds of people that you want to target: the industry, corporation or organization, or the role, okay? That person may have a job that you might like, or simply work within an industry that you're considering. It could also be someone who's employed by a company that you're interested in learning more about. And this is how you approach it with them, is you approach it as, hey, I'm gathering information. You're not asking them for a job, okay? So these interviews are a great way to help you decide on your career path, determine your next career moves, focus your aspirations, or figure out if a company or specific role would be a good fit, but also how to get into that, how to put your best foot forward in your search. You can get nuggets about that as well, okay? They are a way to learn more about what a day is like in that field or industry or at that company, and you can get that inside perspective before you jump into that career path, okay? And for job seekers who already know, what you want to do, and even if you know which organization you want to get into, they're a great way to network your way into that organization. It's also a great way to practice your interview skills without conducting a formal job interview as well, okay? And there are several things that you need to know to correctly use these kinds of interviews as a tool for your job search, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today. For example, how do you set them up? Who should you interview? What questions should you ask? What should you wear, and how should you follow up or continue to stay in touch with the person that you've just spoken with, okay? So basically on this slide here, everybody, is how we would define an informational interview and why we might want to conduct that, okay? So a little bit more on this definition is what it is. It's an opportunity for you to learn what it's really like to work in that field, maybe discover career opportunities that exist at that company or within other organizations that may not be advertised. Get that inside perspective on how to put your best foot forward in your search, or in some cases, before you accept a job offer. If you happen to find someone who, is an alum or a connection that works at the organization that you're considering working at, this is one way you can get that inside perspective on what it's really like and if it's a good fit. It also can help you make a connection in that industry, okay, and begin to help you create your network in that field. Every time I have someone conduct an informational interview, I always tell them or suggest to them, if you look on the slide here, finding others to network with, I always say, ask for other connections as well as part of that meeting, because they may be able to introduce you to other people. That would be fantastic. And at the very bottom here, the last bullet point, it is a chance for you to practice your interview skills with less pressure. But what I will say about this, everybody, is yes, there is a little bit less pressure, right? Because they don't necessarily have a job for you, or you don't know if they do. But you still want to ensure that with these informational interviews, you treat them very seriously, you dress professionally as you would for a job interview, and you err on the side of being more formal than too casual, just like you would with an interview as well. Because you want to make a good impression, obviously, to encourage that person to either hire you later if they, had a job opening as a possibility, or you want to encourage them, obviously, to introduce you to other people as well, okay? So here is what an informational interview is not. It is not a chance for you to talk too much, take more of their time than you all have agreed upon in the first place, and a chance for you to just kind of, blather on about your background and everything else that may not be relevant for what you're asking them about and for that field and industry, okay? It is not a time to ask for a job right then and there. That is not what these are about. And if you let someone know in advance that, hey, I'm just looking for information and I just want to chat with you for a few minutes, they're going to be more likely to get back with you, right? If they think that you're going to ask them for a job or even ask their connections for a job, they're going to be less likely to respond, okay? And of course, we all know this is what you are looking for at the end of the day, and everyone understands that, but you really want to make sure that you let them know, I'm looking for information in just a couple minutes of your time. And then finally, the last thing that it's not, as I just said a second ago, is it's not a time to be too casual with the meeting. Be mindful of their time, be on time, stick to the time that you all have agreed to and has been allotted, and be serious about your career goals and tell them what they are. Be articulate about what you're wanting and where you're going, okay? And if you're not totally clear, by the way, about where you're going career-wise, and you're using one of these informational interviews to learn more about the field or industry in order to get clear, it's okay to say that. Just tell them that up front, so that you don't seem wishy-washy. Go into it in advance saying, I'm researching different career options, and this is one of the career paths I'm considering for these 3 reasons. I'd like to talk with you about whether these reasons are valid and what it's really like to work in that industry. Just tell them up front, okay? So here's the deal, is informational interviews, what we have found with our clients is that most people they know what they are to a certain extent, or they've at least, heard of them. But 9 times out of 10, our clients tell us, whether it's, conducting informational interviews or achieving whatever career goal they come to us to work towards, that they are their biggest obstacle. They are the ones that are getting in their own way, okay? So one of the reasons, or actually several of the reasons, that people don't conduct informational interviews or don't do them effectively, it's because they get in their own way, okay? And so what I want you all to know and understand first here is that you're not alone. This is a normal thing. Most people are hesitant about conducting these and, doing them. And at the very least, they're nervous about it to a certain extent, and that's understandable and okay. And what you need to do is get out of your own way, okay, and start to manage that negative thinking and just push yourself out of your comfort zone. Even to start with just one informational interview, it will get the ball rolling, okay? Here are the obstacles that we hear from our clients about why they don't want to conduct these interviews. They think, oh, they're for young people, recent college grads. I'm more senior in my career and it's not relevant. That's absolutely not true. I had a senior vice president at a large construction firm here in Atlanta, conduct an informational interview with again, a VP at Kimberly-Clark. They spent an hour on the phone, and the woman at Kimberly-Clark at the end said, more people should do this. This was so helpful and smart and wise of you to do. And those people were older than I am. So this is not just about, something that's for young people, okay? It goes across the board. Another obstacle is some people feel too shy, and I get that. It's not like you suddenly have to become extroverted to do this necessarily. Take it step by step. Sometimes conducting them over the phone may make you feel a little bit better at the beginning, okay? And to a certain extent, you just need to try to push past that shyness as much as you can. Keep in mind, if you are a more shy person and more introverted, like I am, having a one-on-one conversation can be a lot easier too. So that can help you as well. Okay. Some people don't want to ask for help, or they don't want to look like they don't know what they're talking about, that, they don't want to admit that, I don't know the answers here. And you need to get over and push past all of this negative thinking if any of these go for you, okay, or are true for you, I should say. So do me a favor, everybody, and I want you to get out your pen and paper or write it on your computer, whatever is best. Write down what are the top 2 obstacles that get in your way of making this happen, whether it's an obstacle on this list here, or if it's just I don't make time for it, I procrastinate, whatever it is here. Identify what the obstacles are first so that you can start to work on those right away. And at the very bottom here, if you take a look, there's a great book called The Introvert Advantage that is really, really helpful for people on the call that may be more introverted and feel like I need to figure out a way to, step out of my comfort zone, but do it in a way where I still feel like myself. I'm not turning into some other person, okay? This is just a great read, very, very helpful for introverts. So why are informational interviews important? It's critical to talk about this for a moment because, it's like, why should I bother doing this in the first place, Hallie? So here's the deal, that between 60 and 70% of jobs out there are secured through the hidden job market. And I'm sure you all have heard about this before. So the hidden job market is those unadvertised positions that people find out about through headhunters, recruiters, or networking. I had a client once who was talking to a friend at a fellow engineering firm, or a local engineering firm close to him in Baltimore. And the guy told him, you know what, there's actually going to be a position opening up here probably in the next 6 months, but they're actually going to ask someone to leave. Someone was going to be let go. And before they wanted to do that, they were trying to find some candidates to fill that position. And he found out about that just through talking to him on the phone one day. So you just don't know what you're going to find out about. I've had clients get interviews from their child's daycare provider. They were dropping their child at daycare one day, talking about their job search, and the woman said, oh, one of my other kids here, his parent works at an architecture firm. Boom, she made the connection. So I know it sounds trite and you've heard it before, but networking can happen anywhere, and it truly, truly can. And informational interviews are critical and can be a very helpful tool in order to help you leverage this hidden job market, and especially expand your network. If you feel like you have a small one, this is a great way to meet new people, okay? All right, so let's take a look at the 5 ways to conduct these informational interviews. So we need to identify and establish and find connections in order to conduct them with people, right? We need to set them up and prepare for them in advance, actually conduct these informational interviews, stay in touch with people afterwards, and staying organized throughout the course of your job search as well. And the staying organized is important because I don't know about you all, but how often have you met or talked with someone and then you leave and about an hour later it's like, I didn't write down exactly what was said and what my action items are, and you may forget 1 or 2 little important nuggets. And having details written down about people that you have spoken to will make a difference to them. Did their son just get into college? Was their daughter playing baseball? Whatever was going on and whatever you talked about during that conversation, it will make a huge difference, especially if you remember 1 or 2 personal details about them. Okay, people connect with people on a personal level. Keep this in mind, and then we'll take a look at this slide here. But keep in mind that people connect with others and establish a stronger connection based on personal things, I find, more often. Okay, so if you can establish some level of a personal connection with someone right out of the box, that will help you enormously with your networking. Okay. So here's how we find our networking connections. Lots of different ways. I always suggest to people, obviously start with people you know, reaching out to people within your inner circle that you know personally and professionally, friends, family members, and LinkedIn connections. First connections are great places to start to identify possible candidates, people you could talk to. I think it's okay, and I have had clients look through second connections as well. And you ask for an introduction to that person through the first connection you have. I had a client, Maggie, who actually was able to speak to someone at an organization that she was applying to, and the guy was great. He said, I'd be happy to pass your resume along and walk it right down to human resources for you. That was a second connection that she had. So go ahead and go through those as well, but start with the people you know first. These are the warm leads, all right? You want to contact a suggested person, whoever this person is, these connections are, and try to arrange a meeting, whether it's face-to-face, over the phone, or via Skype, like we said. You can also, just by the way, and then we'll go through the rest of the slide here, you can do your informational interviews via email. Worst case scenario, I don't prefer that because then you haven't really established that solid connection with someone. But if that's the only way someone is going to, work with you or answer your questions, then that's okay. And then you want to make sure you connect with them on LinkedIn. Other great places here, if you look on the bottom of this slide, though, at the right-hand side, to identify possible connections, your alumni association. And no, Sarah did not pay me to say that. I tell my clients I tell all of my clients or give them this advice. This is an often overlooked, possible pool of people that can be warm leads. I also suggest you consider networking groups. And remember, everybody, don't just go to networking groups where people are unemployed. We need to go to those ones where people could actually get you a job because they're working, okay? You want to look for, as part of that, association meetings. So in the industries that you're considering, look up what their associations are. Go to some of those meetings in order to meet people, face-to-face. And consider social groups as well. I had a client here in Atlanta. He was from Boston originally. He went to a Boston Red Sox viewing party at a bar and got to talking to a connection there that he just met. And the man worked at Bank of America and sent him a bunch of job openings that he thought might be a good fit for him. So you have no idea, what could come out of talking with people. And then finally, attend career fairs. If you have those locally to you, you can find recruiters at those career fairs as well, okay? So these are ways to conduct informational interviews. Oh, and by the way, before we go to the next slide, the reason why I say career fair here at the bottom is because, in a way, meeting with someone at a career fair, a recruiter for a certain organization or someone in HR who is at that career fair, you can talk with them for a few minutes and find out more about that organization and their job openings. So in some way, that can be considered a brief informational interview as well. So this is how you identify connections, okay? The second step is to set up the informational interview, okay? And here are some basic tips. You want to let them know you are looking for information, like we said before, not a job from them per se. And I would recommend you say, I'd like to conduct an informational interview with you so they know what you're talking about. I always recommend that you send your questions in advance, 4 or 5 questions in advance. That's a good number. It's going to let them know. And so actually, let me say it this way, everybody. Here's the deal with sending these questions. I have experience with this because when people want to conduct an informational interview with me, when they send me questions in advance, number one, I feel so much better because I feel like they're organized, they have their act together, they're not going to spend like 2 hours of my time. We've got, 4 or 5 questions and that's it. And I also can think about what those questions are in advance. So I feel better about helping them because I know, like, I can ponder what my answers might be for that and be prepared so I feel like our time is well spent. So be sure to let them know what the questions are that you want to ask them because it will show them all of those things that I just mentioned. Let them know in advance at the beginning too, and I'm going to give you all, by the way, just some sample text that you can use to send in an email to set these up, but you want to let them know that you intend to keep it brief. Ask for 10 to 15 minutes. If they are, willing and able to give you more, fantastic, that's great. But you'll be more likely to get a response from people if you let them know you're going to keep it short because we're busy, okay? So let them know that, but then find out how much time they have when you first get on the phone with them or when you sit down with them for coffee. Double check with them again, how much time is okay for you today, okay? Because you want to be prepared in advance for, I need to keep this brief. Okay, I'm only going to be able to get through 3 questions. That's fine. Or be prepared for longer. I had one client who was not prepared this way, And he expected, the man he was talking to is actually a recruiter at GE, and he expected only about a half an hour. The man was able to give him and ready to give him an hour. So be prepared with more questions, just by the way, just as a backup in case you guys get to talking and it's going so well, or the person ends up having more time, okay? All right, so here is the basic email formula to set these up. And here's the deal with this, everybody. I tend to prefer for my clients to send an email introduction first, because catching someone off guard over the phone can be kind of awkward and not go so well. So I prefer either a LinkedIn message or an email message in advance. Gives them time to kind of ponder it, check their calendar, respond to all of that. Here's the basic formula, and then I'm going to give you a template in just a second on the next slide, okay? You want to introduce yourself. You want to let them know how you found them, or, you know, what the connection is between the two of you. If it was a referral from someone else, you want to mention that in the subject line. So if it's an Emory alum, say fellow Emory alum, you know, requesting assistance or requesting an informational interview. That's the way I would put it in terms of your subject line. But if it was a person, I would say, you know, recommendation or referral from Sarah Hay. Okay, so put the name in the subject line. They will be more likely to open the email in the first place. Okay, I do recommend that you email first, like we just said. And if you don't hear back, it depends on the connection. If they're totally cold, and obviously if you can't find their phone number and you're not comfortable calling them just out of the blue, it's okay to maybe just send them one more email and then let it be, okay? But I encourage people to call and follow up with them if you don't hear back after around 5 business days, okay? Remember to here that you want to let them know you're wanting this informational interview. Use that language. Include times that you are available. You want to make it easy for them to get back with you. Don't make them dig around the calendar and get, you know, go back and forth in several emails to set something up. Make it easy for them, okay? And if you can call them, or I should say here with the phone, if you have set it up as a phone interview with them, you call them. You get their phone number from them, and again, make it easy on them here as well. You call them and let them know you're going to do that. Please let me know the best phone number to reach you, and I will call you at that time, okay? Now, let me say something just really quickly here, everybody, and I'm going to go to this next slide so you can take a look at it for a minute, because I'm not going to read it to you. For some people, you know, they're not going to get back to you. We have to be realistic about this. So I just wanted to mention, too, that I have found typically that our clients have been pleasantly surprised by the number of people that get back with them and are willing to give them a few minutes of their time, even an hour of their time. But we also do have to be realistic here too, and realize, everybody, that it's kind of like sales, right? You're going to get a certain percentage of people that respond to you, a certain percentage of people that say no, or just ignore you completely. Don't feel bad about that. That's part of the process. And keep in mind that you don't have to conduct 50 informational interviews. If you get the ball rolling with a couple, you'll start to expand your network over time, okay? And so you don't have to have a 100%, you know, success rate for people getting back with you all the time. And just know that, yes, some people will not respond at all or say they don't have time, okay? I always say to people in terms of follow-up, and then let me go to the next slide here so we can talk about the setting up and as part of this preparing in advance. I always tell people too that it's okay to be, you know, it's okay to be persistent with people as long as you're polite and professional. That's the critical thing. You're not going to be pesky if you're being professional about it and you're not contacting them all the time, you know, every single day. But I always push people to be a little more persistent than they would normally be, because that's important. And a lot of times people are just busy, and that's why they haven't gotten back to you right away. Okay, so as part of the setup here, everybody, you want to develop your questions. If you take a look at this slide, these are some sample questions that you can use in order to prepare for your informational interview. Some of them are going to be relevant for you, some of them not, okay? Pick and choose the ones that are best for you and come up with some of your own based on what your situation is, okay? But like we said before, you want to make sure that you've got questions prepared and you're ready to ask them the specific things that you need to know about, okay? And then finally, In terms of preparation, you want to do some research in advance, okay? So you don't want to go in there too cold, everybody, looking like you didn't even bother to, get a little bit of information or gather a little bit of information about the industry and the role that they're in. So do a little bit of research about the industry, find out what some of the trends are, what some of the lingo or language is, a little bit more about the company they work for and what their role is, and look them up on LinkedIn as well. I encourage people to connect with their informational interview on LinkedIn after the interview is complete, but check them out beforehand as well, just to see if there's any common ground that you have and understand what their background is so that you can then even better understand how they might be able to help you. So do some of your homework in advance too. Do some of this research in order to understand who you're talking to and what's going on in their industry, so you don't look totally, blindsided, okay? Number 3, let's talk about conducting the interview itself. Obviously, be on time regardless of what it is. If the interview is via Skype, make sure that you practice with your video camera before and your audio as well, and make sure you're dressed professionally for that also, and that the background behind you looks professional enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, but make sure, it doesn't look like you're sitting in your kitchen or something like that. Make sure the background is plain and professional. Stick to the time agreed to, like we just said. Do not go over the time that you've agreed to. Dress professionally. Have your resume and business cards handy, okay? If it is in person, I do not think it is too pushy to have that ready to go. It's okay to ask them at the end, do you mind if I give you a copy of my resume? And you can ask, is it better to give you a hard copy now, or should I just email it to you? Just ask permission. And if they say no, that's fine, okay? And if it's over the phone, ask them if it's okay to email them your resume at the end, if that is appropriate, okay? Act like it's an interview, like we said. Take it seriously, and have your questions written out and a way to take notes, obviously. That's okay to do. People will ask me this, everybody. Is it okay if I have like a notepad with questions on it and a place to write notes? And is it going to look weird if I'm taking notes? Absolutely not. It looks like you're taking things seriously. So that's completely fine to do. One of the things that I want to, and let me go to this next slide actually. One of the things I want to say here at the end too is at the very end of your informational interview, your time with them, you want to kind of design what you're going to do next, if anything, together. If you feel this is a helpful person for you in terms of a connection, you always ask them regardless, how can I help you, okay? But especially if you think they'll be helpful for you, find out how you can stay in touch and if that's okay with them and the best way to do so. And then also ask them, if you think this would work and be helpful, is there anyone else, I could speak to as well that you think it might be helpful for me to talk to? So we always ask the how can I help you question. And then if you feel this is a connection that you want to nurture and someone you want to, keep in touch with, ask how you can stay in touch and the best way to do so. By the way, just with the resume, going back for just a second, if you do send them your resume, I think it's okay in the informational interview itself, or even just for a minute afterwards, just say, if you don't mind, if you have any quick feedback on my resume, I would welcome it. But remember, you're not going to ask somebody to completely review your resume. That would be absolutely ridiculous, right? Resumes are very detailed. It would take a lot of work. But I do think it's okay to say, if you have any quick feedback or overall comments on my resume, I would totally welcome it. Or if you want to bring that, into part of the conversation during the course of the informational interview, because you want to get a specific question answered about it, I think that's okay. But just keep in mind that you're not going to ask them to obviously rewrite it, but review it in great detail. That's not their job, okay? All right, so let's move on to staying in touch, number 4. So I always tell people and recommend, write a handwritten thank you note. Handwritten, I prefer that. I know that it takes longer to get there, but it makes an impression with people, okay? So find out a way and make sure that you're able to get their mailing address so you can send that to them. Connect with them on LinkedIn. Remember to write a message, not just use the standard LinkedIn, invite that's there. Thank you again for meeting with me. I will follow up with XYZ connections, whatever it is. Remember that you want to follow up with any referral they gave you immediately, and keep each person posted on your progress along the way. So if Joe introduced you to Bob and you've met with and talked with Bob, you let Joe know, okay? So you keep everyone posted along the way so that they know that you're following up with their advice, okay? And you never know, Joe might put in a good word to Bob for you, okay? And then I recommend for people in terms of staying in touch, again, it depends on how the meeting goes and how strong the connection was, and if you felt the person was helpful for you and you could be helpful to them. Check in around once a month during the course of your job search, depending on the person and what you discussed, like we said. And especially though, if there were referrals, keep them posted immediately, as each one of those meetings occurs. The ways that you can stay in touch, though, you can send them an article you think might be interesting to them. You can refer someone to them for business, or just give them a quick update on your search. You want to stay kind of front of mind with them in different ways so that they keep you in mind for possible job opportunities that they might hear about, okay? All right, and number 5 is to stay organized. So here's the deal with this informational interviews, job search in general, but especially, just like networking with anyone, it can be very overwhelming because you might be meeting a lot of people, you're talking about a lot of different things, and it can be very easy to get everything kind of jumbled up. So we recommend that you take a moment each week to stay organized and keep track of who you've met with, what has happened, what information was shared, any referrals they gave you, what your next follow-up action is, and the notes about any personal information that they shared with you at that time, and what you want to do next. So, okay, I don't need to follow up with them for another month or whatever it is, or we said we would meet for coffee at this period of time, whatever it was. So we recommend that you maintain an Excel spreadsheet with everybody's name in there to help you track all of these pieces, okay? And we actually have one of these job search worksheets that can help you with the networking piece and informational interviews, but also with all of the moving parts of your job search. We're happy to give that to you for free. Just send me an email at admin@halliecrawford.com, and I will email this back to you so that you've got this Excel spreadsheet ready to go for your job search, and you can start filling it out. And just put Emory Webinar in the subject line for me so that I know who it is, what it's from, okay? Happy to send that to you. It's in Excel, and you can customize it to your needs, okay? And there's also a couple of other things that I wanted to give you all, and then we'll start to wrap up here so we can get to some Q&A. If you're interested in our free report, 6 Steps to Jumpstart Your Job Search, feel free to send me an email as well at admin@halliecrawford.com. This will give you the 6 things you need to do right away. If you're like, okay, I need to start a job search, gosh, what are the steps I need to take? Okay, I know update my resume, but what do I do after that? This gives you those 6 steps. Happy to give you that. And also a discount off of a job search coaching session or any of our resume writing or LinkedIn services. Again, just send me an email. Happy to give you those items and any more information you need. Okay? So let's pause here for a moment. I know I've thrown a lot at you, and we're going to get to Q&A in just a moment here. What I want you all to do right now, please, is take a look at this slide, and I want you to think about 2 action steps you will take in the next couple of weeks. Whether it's, gosh, I need to update my resume so that I can start going on these informational interviews, or I need to go through my first connections on LinkedIn and come up with 5 people I want to reach out to between now and, January 15th, something like that for informational interviews. So you have to keep in mind this quote from Michael Jordan, fantastic, right? If you're trying to achieve something, whatever it is, of course, there's going to be roadblocks. We always will have those, okay? But what you need to pay attention to, everybody, and make sure is identify what those obstacles are and don't allow them to stop you. Don't turn around and give up. Figure out how to climb that wall, go through it, or work around it, whatever it is. So go ahead and take a moment, everyone, and identify 2 action steps. Please feel free to share those online, as well as ask questions if you have any. We'll get started with that part. And as you're pondering all that, wanted to share this with you for just a moment. Our Identify Your Ideal Career webinar series is coming up. It starts Wednesday, January 31st. It is a live series with me directly. It's 4 sessions, but it's webinar, which is great, so you can participate on your lunch hour. from your office or your car, whatever it is, because it's online. It's a fantastic group. We get rave reviews from this. And it is for those of you on the call today or listening in who need to figure out your career direction. It's for identifying your ideal career, okay? So if you feel lost in your job search in terms of, gosh, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up or what my next step is and I'm in the wrong job right now, this is the program for you. It's fantastic. These are some of the testimonials from previous programs. If you have any questions or want to know more about this program or talk with me about it, just send me an email at admin@halliecrawford.com. Happy to chat with you about it, okay? All right. So let's go to the Q&A. And Sarah, if you could help me kind of field through those, that would be great. It's easier for me to have you say them because then I can kind of ponder and think on the right answer.
Oh, of course. Absolutely. So yes, take a moment, ask whatever you would like to. Our first question, is it strange to say during an informational interview, I saw on your LinkedIn profile that, are you okay with referencing it? And I just want to weigh in here. I reference it all the time when I'm speaking with alumni, and in my mind, it's doing your research, and it makes sense that you're going to cite the source. Hallie, what do you think?
Absolutely, I agree as well. This is much more common these days. That's what LinkedIn is for. It's not like cyber stalking or weird anymore. It's not like that at all. It's public information, right? So yes, absolutely. I noticed this on your LinkedIn profile. I was really impressed, blah, blah, blah. It's a conversation starter. And like Sarah said, yeah, it shows you've done your homework. I think it's a good thing. Great question.
All right. So now, related question, how could you gather information about, well, when you're in the interview and you're trying to gather information about the potential role, how do you probe without going too far?
Probe about the role without going too far. Honestly, I hate to say this, but I don't think there is a too far necessarily. So in my opinion, a touchy topic or subject would be compensation, obviously, and that's where we want to be mindful of, privacy and that it's kind of touchy. If you did want to find out, for example, about compensation, you can just ask for a range. Like, would you mind telling me, ask permission again, would you mind telling me, do you happen to know what, a range for salary might be for this role or this position, even if it's just a range? And if they're not comfortable telling you, that's okay. But that's a touchy, kind of a touchier subject. But the rest, beyond that, invite them to be honest. If you feel like you need to let them know that you would keep whatever they tell you confidential as part of the conversation, that would be a way to help them feel more comfortable as well. And I think the way to kind of get started with it, though, is to ask kind of broader questions at the beginning and start to drill down a little bit more based on how the conversation is going and if that person seems like they'd be comfortable with that. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that?
I do not. I agree that I think you just try and read them and how much they are willing to share. You probably will be able to tell by their face or other type of body language that they would prefer that you stop that line of questioning.
Yeah, and it's totally okay to say, totally understand. I have one other question for you. I really appreciate your time. Just be confident about it and move on from that topic.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so in a similar vein, when you are in the conversation, what are your tips for building a genuine enough connection to get someone to open up? And I know you're going to send out some of the questions, but any tips here on building that rapport?
Sure, absolutely. So one, to help build the rapport, have some sort of, something that you'll reference at the beginning. I mean, one thing to do is just reference like a recent event or, a sporting event or a movie you've seen or something like that. Connect on something personal if possible. Steer away from touchy topics, okay? But if there's something especially that you saw in their LinkedIn profile, like, they published a paper that was a topic of interest to you or whatever it is. There are ways to establish that connection kind of from the get-go through researching LinkedIn as well. Another way to do that, though, too, is to kind of mirror their body language a little bit and the cadence to the conversation. So pay attention to how fast or slow they talk, what their body language is, if they tend to be more, assertive and quick. Kind of mirror that a little bit in order to make that connection as well. And then the third thing I would say too is whatever they choose in terms of the format for you all talking, whether it's phone or in person or whatever, let them choose whatever it is. Don't be pushy, obviously, about it needs to be this or this or this. And if they want to choose something that's in person, let them pick the place. You can suggest something, but let them choose it so they're kind of in their comfort zone as well. So those would be some of the ideas to establish that genuine rapport. Oh, and sorry, one other thing. Hold on, Sarah. So one other thing, too, that I thought of, and it left my brain for a second, is when you are genuine and authentic, and you are honest with them about, what's going on for you and what you're looking for, and you're really open, that will invite them to do the same. And even if they don't, it will establish more of a connection. So authenticity, I think, is really important here. That doesn't mean you air your dirty laundry or something like that. You don't get into the personal, realm. But the more authentic and down to earth and real you are with them, the more that connection will be strongly established. That's the last one.
Okay. All right, great. Now we have 2 questions related to timing. So first one, we have someone here who always includes in her initial outreach email that she only needs about 15 minutes. How do you kindly ask if they have more time while you're on the phone with them and you feel that it's right to try and extend it? And if you feel like it's not going well and they continue going over your time, how would you politely end it?
Oh, great questions. I love these. Okay, so the first one, remember to check in at the very get-go of the conversation. So is 15 minutes still okay with you? Do you have a hard stop at that point? I just want to make sure that I'm mindful of your time. And you might find out that way if you can go over a little bit. And if you're getting closer to the end, you could say to them, politely, I have just 1 or 2 more questions. I think it'll take a couple more minutes. Is that okay with you? Again, I want to be mindful of your time. So just ask one more time and say, I've got a couple more things. You've given me great information and another question came to mind. Do you mind if I just ask you one more item and then we'll close? And then you'll be able to tell based on what they say. So those are 2 ways to handle that. If it's going on long, because at the beginning of the conversation, you're not necessarily going to say, I only have 30 minutes. That doesn't make sense, okay, on your end. So if the conversation is going long, though, you can close to that time, like you pay attention to the clock on your end, obviously, because one way or another, like we said, you don't want to go over their time. And it would be better if you were the one that said, okay, we're getting close to about 20 minutes here, and I want to be mindful of the time that you gave me. See what I mean? So don't expect them to do it and then, oh my gosh, they have to rush off the phone. So pay attention to the time on your end as well. And just simply say, this has been so helpful so far. I really appreciate it. I have an appointment coming up. If there's any other questions that I can ask you, do you mind if I email you? So just have a standard way that you can close things out and just let them know that you have an appointment you need to get to in the story.
All right, so second question related to timing. How often should you follow up with someone after meeting with them for an informational interview, especially because I know this happens a lot if there isn't a job open at that time, or it's maybe you're about to graduate or finish another degree, so you wouldn't actually be applying for quite some time. So how do you keep that relationship going?
Sure, great question. It depends a little bit on what they've said to you. So for example, if they said, we'll be hiring in about 6 months, then you can say, okay, great. Do you mind if I, touch base with you once between now and then I'll touch base with you again in 6 months? Or you can just offer and say, great, can I touch base with you in 6 months? And they'll say, cool. So try to design a touch base plan during the course of the informational interview. Find out some timing, if there is any timing to be had at that point. And you can even tell them, I'll be graduating, at this time. Do you mind if I touch base with you about a month before then? to chat about any new changes or ask any other questions that have come up. Okay. And beyond that, though, if you don't have a sense of specific timing and it's kind of more open-ended and you're actively in job search mode now, then I would just kind of stay in touch with them once a month. And you can even, one of your check-ins with them could even be, hey, I just wanted to wish you and your family a happy holiday or whatever it is. I had a woman who sent out a gratitude email to all of her connections that had helped her with her job search in the previous year before that. And she just said, I just wanted to thank you so much for your time that you gave me. It was so helpful. So those are ways that you can stay in touch as well, around once a month.
And if you happen to live in a city where there is an Emory alumni chapter, or if you are in Atlanta, there's no excuse. You can always invite them to go with you to an upcoming alumni event. And even if they can't attend, it's just about getting that point of connection. So, and let them know what you're thinking about them. Okay, so internal interviewing. We have some folks here who want to know how they do that discreetly and how they go about that process of sending an email to someone in another department or a higher up who they want to speak to about a potential role in their department.
Okay, great question. So first of all, you have to realize that you are taking a potential risk, right? And if there's someone that you'd like to talk to at your organization, but that person might leak that, might say something about it and might jeopardize your job, and that's going to be a problem for you, then you can't do it. Just end of story. If you feel like that person will keep it confidential, that you can ask him to do so, or ask them to do so, and they will keep it confidential, you can take that risk, but just be mindful that it could be a problem. If you decide to go forward with it, better to not use email, better to, I think, ask them if they can meet, somewhere offsite for coffee and, chat a little bit and tell them what's going on. Because I think it's better just, to say everything that you need to say in person and also let them know that it needs to be confidential. Does that answer, Sarah, or was there more that I missed?
I believe that answers everything. If that person wants to ask a follow-up question, feel free to do so.
Yeah. But you have to be careful. So just know that you have to make that decision based on your situation, what that person is like. If they're in a completely different department, like way far away, it's a huge organization, and the likelihood of it getting back to your boss is low, okay, fine. And just take that risk, right? But if it's small and tight knit, you got to realize that, word might get around. So you just have to decide on a case by case.
And I think you can usually feel out the company culture right away. Every job I have ever had has promoted internal networking, especially if there are many career paths set out or people realize, if you're in higher ed, you might not get a promotion. So they'll encourage you to seek other roles. So it's, I think you can feel out that company culture when you initially start a role or ask your colleagues. And then you'll find out if people would be upset if they found out you were taking a colleague out for coffee.
Yes.
Okay. So
good.
I know we are running low on time, but we do have some questions about our more seasoned job seekers. Do you have any unique techniques that the more seasoned job seekers that you mentioned earlier, informational interview is for all ages, but how they should go about things?
I honestly think it's, for the most part, it's the same. For more seasoned people, there might be an opportunity. People might be more willing to give you a little bit more time. And going to their office, I think, for more seasoned people can sometimes, be more likely. But beyond that, it's for the most part the same. The other thing that would be different would be obviously the types of questions you ask. They'd be more detailed, more targeted, more specific, most likely less generic. And you'd want to, just like with anybody else, you'd want to sell yourself a little bit, but part of doing that would be to show kind of what your expertise is and what your background is. And part of doing that would be asking those really targeted questions. But honestly, for the most part, besides that, it's the same. Sarah, do you have any other thoughts on it?
What I see in our alumni community is the more seasoned professionals are coming out to events that aren't necessarily networking events take many forms, right? So they might come out to volunteer at a student alumni networking event. They might come out to an event where we are hearing from a speaker about their industry. So, but without saying it, they are going around the room and speaking to people and might make their desire to change careers known, but they're doing it slowly and thoughtfully. So I think that is a good strategy for those people who might not be in too much of a rush to change jobs and they have a large network, and so it's just going to be a different process.
Yeah.
So I see with our younger alums, they want to change quickly. So last question, do you recommend the use of a one-page networking profile that's recommended by some outplacement firms? So highlights on your accomplishments, et cetera.
I do like those. Absolutely. It needs to be well written. It needs to be targeted. It needs to be formatted so that it's easy to scan and read. But I do like those a lot. I call them, like a one sheet. And I actually have our clients, or I recommend those to our clients just in job search mode, even outside of, networking, that they can submit them as part of their application in some cases. I've had people create like a short PowerPoint deck even that shows and highlights their expertise if they're transferring from one industry to another, but they want to show what their transferable skills are and what transferable experience is there. Sometimes they will do that. You're not going to hand somebody a PowerPoint deck in a networking event, but that's another thing that you could do as a follow-up item afterwards via email. So yes, I do recommend them. I think they're very good.
Okay. All right, wonderful. Well, Hallie, thank you so much. I do want to mention again, because we've had several questions, this presentation was recorded. It will be housed on the Emory University YouTube channel. We actually have a career webinars playlist within there. I will send out a follow-up email with information on that playlist, Hallie's slide deck, and also our coaching resources so that you all can consider working with a career or leadership coach. For those of you who inquired about returning to the workforce, there are two organizations who I really respect, Après and the other one is escaping me right now, but Après is probably the number one, and I will send you information on the other one as well, so that those of you returning to the workforce can find specific resources to your situation. And Hallie, do we want to say one more thing about the Ideal Career Workshop?
Yes. Contact me if you have any additional questions or information. It's interactive. You get one-on-one support from me directly, and people figure out their career direction from this program. It's fantastic. And it comes with our career direction workbook, which is really, really helpful, and it gives you all the tools, as well as our ideal career model that tells you the 8 things you need to know in order to define your career direction once and for all. So it's fantastic. Love to talk to you guys about it.
Yep, and we just had a few alumni go through that program this fall, so we will try and get some testimonials from them. If you would like to speak to an alum who went through the program, we can try and set that up. That information will be available soon. And visit alumni.emory.edu/career calendar to find out events happening in your area. We have several happening in Atlanta and are planning to do many more in our regions around the U.S. and even internationally. So stay tuned for that, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Hallie, for your advice.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.